Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik with Figure It Out Productions. The following video is part of our Quick Shoot series.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about this. This is an RGB modified Nintendo 64. What does that mean? It means that this console has been upgraded to make its video quality better than it normally would be. We'll talk more about that specifically in a bit. First, I'd like to tell you how I got this. So you guys might remember possibly back in May of 2016, I went up to Waterloo, Ontario, Canada for the Waterloo Game Swap. While I was there, a couple of guys named John and Patrick who modify consoles actually came up to me and they talked to me for a bit and then they just gave this to me. So thank you again, guys, for doing that. And then I showed it to you guys the next month, like the beginning of June, and I was like, yeah, you know, this thing's really cool. I'm gonna do a video on it really soon, I promise. And time flies and I never actually had the chance, so better late than never. We're finally going to talk about it, why not? But yeah, it's an RGB modified Nintendo 64. Now what exactly does that mean? So if you're not familiar with that whole concept of like, you know, which cables do I use on my N64 or any console to like get the best picture and all that stuff, because not everybody does. I'm going to explain it to you guys as simple as I can. Basically, when you look at a lot of our classic consoles, our 90s consoles as we think of them, you know, the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, whatever, most of these consoles had a mode they were running in called RGB. That's basically, you can think of it like the way the console's mentally processing the game was in RGB. And when you plugged it into your television with composite cables, you know, the shitty ass yellow ones, it goes, fuck, I can't, that's not RGB, that can't use RGB, because it can't. Composite cables are just an approximation of what the image is. So basically, in order to get the console to work through composite, it had this little transcoder chip inside the console that degrades the shit out of the image so that it can just display something on your TV. In North America, I know because I grew up here in the US, that's what we had to deal with, because we didn't know any better. That's all we really had. There was S-Video, which was an alternative option that would, you know, it wouldn't make it beautiful. It was still worse than RGB, but it at least would separate the contrast from the colors, and it would look a little bit better. However, in Europe, they had a third option. They had a cable called Scart. Now, we didn't have this, it never came out here, but Scart was essentially an all-purpose video connection cable. It had your audio and your video all in the same cable. But in addition to doing that, it had multiple video options in the same cable. So Scart would basically, if you had a console connected from Scart to your television, and the console only supported, you know, composite, it would just pass the composite signal straight through. If it detected that the console could, you know, run composite and S-Video, it would just pass the S-Video signal straight through, even though we're still talking about the same one Scart lead. But if it detected RGB, it would pass RGB through. So essentially in Europe, if they had the Sega Mega Drive, aka Sega Genesis over here, and so that console supports RGB, if they were to plug a SCART cable from it to the television through the SCART port, they would have the console thinking in RGB, and it would just send that straight on through to the TV, and it would display in RGB. No degradation of the image. We did not have that luxury over here. Now, things have changed over here, fortunately. Now, we don't have SCART on our televisions or anything like that, but now, because people are learning how great RGB was, a lot of devices have come out. Things like the SCART to HDMI device, I did a video on it, or the FrameMeister, which is the Rolls-Royce of devices like that, also did a video on it. And now there's even newer options, things like the OSSC, also did a video on it. Basically, these boxes allow you to play these RGB-capable consoles using RGB on a North American television. In addition to that, they have all sorts of bells and whistles to make it look even better, which is awesome. So you would want to take advantage of that, in theory, by upgrading all your consoles if you're into that kind of thing. But one console that's always kind of omitted from all of these lists, very curiously, is the Nintendo 64. Well, there is a reason for that. Nintendo did not include RGB capabilities in this console. Sad day for all of us. Basically, the best they allowed for was S-Video. And the saddest part about that is that the S-Video cables that were produced, even the ones by Nintendo, were terrible. I know, because I bought a bunch of them years ago, and I was testing them out, seeing like which is better, what, you know. And there would be like random like dots and shit that would show up on the screen. It was absolutely abysmal. The only ones I found that were actually good were these. These are purple ones by a company called Monster. Now the problem with these is they're really expensive, they're extremely hard to find, produced in low numbers, and they were only sold inside the United States. These Monster as a company actually forbid retailers from actually shipping these to other countries. Even Canada couldn't get these. So as a result, yeah, S-Video is not really the way to go either. Now this might sound familiar to you, because I did a video very similar to this a few years ago, basically on the exact same concept of an RGB modified Nintendo 64. But that video is kind of old. I know a lot of people don't check it out on that basis, so I kind of wanted to retouch on that, touch base with a slightly upgraded version, and we'll go from there. So this, as mentioned before, is an RGB modified Nintendo 64. This one was modified by John and Patrick, who actually, now that I think about it, I'm going to include a lot of their information in the description. I'll include their Instagram, their website, their eBay page and stuff. They modified this. They also modified a bunch of other consoles like Dreamcast with onboard VGA, region-free GameCube, RGB TurboGrafx 16/PC Engine, region-free Sega Saturn, region-free Super Nintendo/Super Famicom, all that kind of stuff. You can check out their website and all that stuff for way more information. It is worth noting though, they're Canadian, obviously, so if you go to their website and you see prices and all that stuff and you're an American, you know, remember it's CAD, so you have to take about 25% off to get about the US price. I believe they do ship to other countries besides the US and Canada, but you know, financially it may not be worth it to do it if you live in Europe, but you know, feel free, go ahead and investigate. I did work out a little deal with them. If you're willing to bypass eBay and just work with them directly, they'll give you 10% off of your order. The logic to that is then they don't have to pay eBay fees, so they win, you win. Anyway, I'll give you, again, the information's in the description. You can go ahead and contact Patrick specifically and he'll give you all the information you want. But yes, in regards to this N64, as opposed to the old one that I talked about. The old one was modified by a buddy of mine named Raymond who lives in the UK. Now his mod was good, but it was done kind of at the birth of the RGB mod for the N64, which meant there were a lot more restrictions on it. You needed very specific boards, you needed specific models of the N64. I remember it had to be an American N64 that was a specific board, and at the same time, if you did the mod, you would have to lose the composite abilities and you'd have to lose the S-Video capabilities. And I believe it was a very clunky mod to try and put together. Times have changed. Now, this one in particular, he didn't have to sacrifice the composite, he didn't have to sacrifice the S-Video. He essentially just added RGB into it. And I believe I looked inside and it looked a lot less convoluted inside, which is nice. On top of that, he also put a custom LED inside. It's actually got a green LED as opposed to the original red one, which is cool. I mean, I guess you could get it whatever color you want. But yeah, so the other thing about it, when I tested it as opposed to the other one I've had, this one seemed a lot friendlier with things like the Scart HDMI box, the FrameMeister, the OSSC. Those, the old one would occasionally have like random drops and sometimes just wouldn't work with certain games and stuff. This one I didn't run into any problems like that, which was nice. I also have to admit, I think the video quality off of this one is actually better. Probably has to do with newer parts. But I'm going to show that to you guys in just a minute. But I do want to note this because I'm sure people will bring it up. I'm aware that HDMI boards for the N64 are coming. However, they're extraordinarily expensive at this point in time. And, you know, I'm sure John and Patrick will get into that at some point in the future, but RGB mods are still pretty good. They're much cheaper, and really it's, if you already have kind of an RGB setup, meaning like things like a FrameMeister or an OSSC or whatever, and you really just want to integrate an N64 into that system, probably going to be the way you want to go, but you know, it's obviously it's completely up to you.
Okay, so we got the game up and running. I chose Star Wars Rogue Squadron. Please note that I'm using the expansion pack, so graphically, yes, literally the graphics, not the picture quality, will actually be better because this is one of the games that took advantage of it. You can see on the upper left corner the type of video connection we're using at any given time. So in this case, it's a composite, and it's pretty washed out. I mean, it's an enhanced game because of the expansion unit, so it looks better than most N64 games, but we're focusing on picture clarity here, people, not graphics. Now, we just switched over to S-Video. Now, I realize that's probably not the best spot to switch between the two, but trust me, you'll get another look at it soon enough. Yeah, so Star Wars Rogue Squadron, I don't know if you guys ever played it. It's a pretty awesome game, actually. I should mention, because I think I forgot to earlier, in regards to Patrick and John, they offer the ability to either sell you a console outright, or they do modification services. So if you're local to the Toronto area, you can just drop it off and they'll do that, or you can ship it and all that stuff. But that, again, you can contact them about it and negotiate all that kind of stuff. But yeah, now we're taking a look here at RGB Old. Now I called it that because this is the older RGB console. Now, I don't know how well you've noticed it so far, but there is a substantial improvement in the picture clarity when you jump from one thing to the next. And trust me, you'll get a face full of it soon enough. But I just wanted to let this play out a little bit and show you kind of like, what it can potentially look like. At least this is the one I have been using for a few years. Now we switch over to the new RGB, and it is substantially better than, obviously, composite and S-Video, and it admittedly is brighter and a little bit cleaner than the old one. Now, there's another thing I need to note here, because this is definitely worth noting. The way I'm capturing this is I'm running it through a FrameMeister and then a Hauppauge HD PVR 2. So please take note of the fact that this is running through a FrameMeister, but that actually kind of means a lot, because yes, it does make the RGB look even better than it otherwise normally would, but it also makes the composite look better than it would, and composite looks like shit. Look at it. We just dropped back down to composite. Now, basically, I've decided to take this title card from the game and just kind of run it through every single cord or every single type of cable so that you can get a really good sense of what it looks like. Now, focus around the upper and the edges. You can see it's kind of like flickering and stuff. Look at the Star Wars logo. Boom. You see how much sharper it just got when we switched over to S-Video? Now that, like I said, S-Video, all it is, it's essentially composite, but it separates the colors from the contrast. As a result, things are sharper, but nothing, your resolution doesn't change, nothing else really changes about it. Here we switch to RGB, boom, look how much clearer that got. Now this is the old RGB. In a minute you'll see the difference between the new RGB and the old RGB mod, but you can tell just from that alone that RGB clearly is superior and the way to go. But again, unfortunately the N64 does not do this natively. It does require the modification. But now we take a look at what is now the slightly newer modification, and you can see that there. If you want to go back and kind of click between the two, you can tell. But basically, the newer RGB is slightly brighter and it is slightly sharper. But the point is to compare it to things like S-Video and composite, because it's not like you'll be trying to decide between two different types of RGB mods. But let's go back down to composite. Bam! Do you see that shit? Look at the stark difference between those two. Stark difference, sorry. And now, just in case you missed it, back to RGB. Holy crap, what a difference. I'm going to show it to you one more time. We're going to go down to composite. Are you ready? Are you going to see it? Here we go. Boom! Look at his face. Look at Mark Hamill's face. You can barely even tell what it is anymore. It's all blown out. It's over. It's too bright and just nastiness. And look at the logo up by the upper right corner of the S. Boom! Now you can actually tell what it is. See how awesome that is? Anyway, so that's it, guys. I hope it helps you guys. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, John and Patrick, and I'll see you guys later.